All right, here we are. Facebook live website Wednesday, 12 o'clock, very rainy here in Baltimore. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Today is a fun day because we are not only going to feature four sites, one of which we have featured in the past, and I continue to love it, Gratz College, and a few others that are new for this website Wednesday. But we're also joined by Rita Lafon, who's the Director of Client Solutions, and we want to focus a little bit on the state of affairs as it relates to design trends and best practices, having now been through a year and change through this pandemic, and really having embraced, or many of our schools having embraced this idea of digital campus, and knowing that habits have been evolving with so much of our world being virtual. So we thought we would look at some of these sites together, talk about them, and focus a bit on that, those sorts of best practices. And hopefully from that, you can take a look at your own site and see what kinds of things might be applicable. And as always, we're open to getting on the phone with a school and talking through their own site and providing feedback free of charge. Just, we're always picking up new ideas from clients and non-clients alike, so we're happy to do it. So please feel free to reach out. But Rita, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Glad to join today.
So I have all four sites open. Maybe we can start with the Commonwealth School, and I'll refresh because sometimes there are little opening animations and things. But I know you've probably had a little time looking at this site. Maybe just talk through some of the things that you think are worth noting and might be in line with some of the trends that we've been seeing over the last 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, so really what we're looking at is we're starting to look at our websites with fresh eyes, right? Now that we've kind of been forced to rely very heavily on our digital experiences more so than ever before, we're kind of able to relook at things and see what works and what doesn't work, and where we can motivate our audiences and where we can reduce friction and frustration. And one of the great things that I liked about Commonwealth, just upon initial entry, is that pulsating play button. It's such a subtle effect, but it just captures your attention and it just intrigues you enough to want to press play. So I thought that was a very interesting approach that they took there. We think about engagement, we think about interactivity, and we think about doing things with purpose, right? And so I think that was a great approach, so people can watch the video probably longer than they would have had that just been automatically playing. As we kind of scroll down a bit, we're thinking about a lot of times that social proof, and that has become much, much more important now that we're kind of been more restricted or confined. And so being able to show that human side and doing it in a way that can connect with people, even remotely, I think is going to be very good. Having an authentic voice, having that human touch, and being able to present that in a way where your users can interact and engage and read through these quickly and succinctly is going to be very beneficial for all schools.
Yep.
In addition, as we go through all of this, you'll notice that their headings, so by the numbers on the left-hand side, in addition to what they had done before, we think about visual hierarchy, right? Putting visual importance on certain pieces of information, whether that's contextual or whether that's graphical, so that way it draws our eyes so we can quickly and easily read and digest this information. And so quickly you're looking at the numbers by the numbers, and then you're kind of intrigued to understand, well, what does that mean? What are the numbers? What are the interesting facts about this particular school?
Yep.
So great with happening now. I think they did good at positioning the events on the left.
Yep.
Quickly kind of can read that, but then you can see a clear distinction between events and news that's happening on the right-hand side.
And I'm always appreciative of, I say this almost every time, of having the day of the week
Yes.
with the calendar. But yeah, I think this is a nice pairing of calendars and news. Clearly they're doing a good job keeping it current. Anything about the footer or calls to action?
Great calls to action. I think that's important to making sure that that's readily available. You'll notice that along the right-hand side, if you hadn't noticed, that they kept those sticky along the journey. So at any point in time, if they were ready to complete an action, that was going to be at your fingertips, in addition to down at the bottom once they've completed that story, right? As they read through all the great information, there's now that prompt to do something next.
Yeah. I mean, and what I like about, just to build on a little of some of the things that you've said, it's not a complicated site. We definitely have a tendency to, or there's a potential tendency to over-engineer all this stuff. But it's just a simple drop-down, nice, simple color scheme, bright, easy to look at, not a lot of noise, and they keep that consistent throughout. One of the questions that we get a lot while I'm thinking about it is how often nowadays to redesign. Like, has that changed over the years? If you had asked me that 10 years ago, I might have said, well, maybe every 5 years, but it's probably more like every 3 years. Wouldn't you say, Rita?
Yeah, it is. It's becoming more so common to do that. And really, what we look at is, and it can be different for different schools. Some schools definitely have to do it every 3 years. Some schools might find themselves at the 5 years. Some might find themselves at the 4 year. And really what we're looking at is the website performing as you need it to? Are you able to accomplish your goals still with the existing website? And if you're finding yourself saying no or maybe not more readily and more frequently, that's the time in which you need to really look at your website. And is it doing, is it doing you any good, right? Is it motivating your audience to do the behaviors that you want them to do through the site? Are you able to promote and share that information that you need to as school administrators? And if you're finding yourselves kind of hitting a wall at each juncture, that's when you really want to start to look at, okay, perhaps we need to revisit the website if it's not working for us. I read a very interesting article from the New York Times about pandemic prompting massive amounts of home renovations, right? As we were confined to our homes. How many of us rearranged our house how many times throughout the past year, or started building out office spaces and whatnot, right? Because we're looking at things through a fresh perspective. Things aren't working for us anymore as they used to. And so that's what we're looking at with website design as well.
Well, yeah, and not only that, and by the way, the cost of a 2x4 is like 3 times the cost of it used to be. And but not only that, you could safely say that we're just more sophisticated consumers virtually, because we've spent, while before the pandemic, everybody was using the web, but it was maybe on the phone, on on as you're out and about. But nowadays, it's just been 100% of most people's time. So we're just better about discerning between what's really good and a good user experience and what isn't. Maybe we can't articulate, or maybe we can't say why we think this website's better than the other as an end user, but we know it when we see it, kind of thing. So yeah, for sure. So let's, go ahead.
I was gonna say, we've been forced to do so many things online now. If you think about it just yourselves, I've never ordered groceries online as much as I have. And I don't think it's changing that much. That's the thing, we're creating new habits. While it might not be quite as severe as, last March, it's still ingraining new habits, new patterns, and new ways of how we're looking at things.
Yeah. And, we use Instacart, just to pick up on that. And it's funny how you begin to appreciate reduced number of clicks. There are sites where it's, is it that much harder when you have to, click through 5 screens versus 3 screens? Does it really take, maybe it takes another 20 seconds and it's a little annoying, but it is. And so you leave feeling like, man, that was a pain, even though in reality it was a difference of a half a minute. And the same is true for these school sites. If they're moving around them and it's hard, or they leave like, gosh, that was much harder than it needed to be. They're just leaving with an experience that you wouldn't want them to leave your campus thinking, geez, that was, I had to walk through the mud, and then there wasn't a sidewalk, and the signs were bad. I got lost in the woods. You would never want that. All right. So Rita, you'll have to review this site in French, if that's okay. I'm kidding. So this is Hatam, or I hope I'm not butchering the name. So tell us a little bit about this site.
So I think, with this particular one, they get right down to business, which I really like. And they've done some things a little bit differently, right? They have their value statements right here on the hero area, but they've done it in a way that it doesn't feel cluttered. And what's really great here is that it is, again, motivating me to want to click through, to stay within the site, to learn more about this particular school, which is ultimately what we want people to do, right? And so, I'm quickly understanding the difference of this particular educational experience. They have a nice clean navigational structure. Along the right-hand side, we have some sticky call to actions that as we scroll down, we're going to notice how those transform and kind of tuck away a little bit. So that way it's not intrusive to the rest of the information, but it's still, again, readily available at our fingertips. As we go here, I'd like to pause here for a moment, and they've done a great job of getting right down to the key divisions in which they're serving, as well as the key differentiator for this particular school being that IB program. And so right from here, I can quickly learn that they do offer kindergarten all the way through high school, and I can dig in and click through to learn more about those specific programs. And that's the great thing about this particular site that we're going to notice as we interact with it, as we hover over certain things. There are great prompts, great call to actions to learn more and to dig into the content, which is ultimately what we want to do. And Google is picking up on that as well, right? Their algorithm is changing this year. They are looking at page experience. They are looking at engagement. They're looking at, are you doing things to keep people engaged with your content, with your site? Thinking about, time spent on page, thinking about, just what is that ultimate page experience? Are people getting what they need out of it? Even their infographic. So as we hover over their infographic, which takes a really nice, different layout perspective to, again, capture our attention, it's prompting us to dig in and learn more about who their alumni are, right? What's so great about their programs?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really great use of an infographic. So it's not just static, it's very dynamic in interactivity.
It's really a lovely site.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Colors, the gray and the reds really work well. I love the chalkboard up that we just saw. It's funny because I don't know how many sites, probably collectively we've reviewed, but there's always a different way to present things, but things do seem to be getting more just simpler and a little more intuitive. And, there's a lot more of an appreciation for white space and thinking about what's on the screen at any given point in time, just to help the user focus. And this in particular, I've really liked seeing that show up on a lot of our sites where it just seems obvious now, but maybe a couple of years ago you wouldn't have this. Just look, here's your entry point. Clearly prospective parents are thinking about one of these. Likely, maybe they have a couple of kids, but by and large, they're thinking about a particular age or entry grade. So it just makes a ton of sense.
Definitely. And if you think about, how do you improve your leads, right? How do we make sure that we're getting the right qualified leads so that way our admissions teams aren't spending too much time going through a bunch of inquiries that aren't maybe necessarily best suited for your particular school. And so that definitely helps to make sure that you're getting good qualified leads better than maybe you had been previously.
Yeah, and all of these little bits, like what you mentioned with the sticky nav and this and the translation service, like all those things, the little hover states, I think are signs of a design that is sensitive to the latest trends and best practices, because they're conveniences. They're not just cool for the sake of being cool. They're useful and they make sense. So I think that's a big difference in terms of this year versus a couple of years ago.
Definitely. Yeah. We want to design with purpose, right? And we want to design around content that's meaningful, that adds value to the audiences, right? What are they going to find important? What are they going to, what's going to help them make those decisions? And so, we think about content creation. We really want to think about what's motivating our audiences and speaking to them in that way, as opposed to, as web administrators, or folks at the school, we have a story we want to tell, but we want to make sure that we're doing it from the point of view of our users now, right? And so we're kind of transitioning to more this client-centric, or user-centric design perspective, and making sure we're putting them first and what motivates them first, and kind of building designs and structure around that.
So let's transition to Gratz. A couple of things just that may not be obvious, but one of them is that Gratz College is an online, university or online college. And I think they do a really nice job of making it feel like that the experience is still going to be compelling and meaningful. And, they do that through some really nice photography. And overall, it's a really great design. But, structurally, very straightforward. Not a lot of, sort of fancy design treatments, but there's a good use of the gold as a spot color. They pick up these dots in different ways that just kind of helps make the design pretty unique. I mean, really big, obvious calls to action that have good contrast against the large picture. And, then you get some of the nice text that, not a lot of words, really, maybe 50 words here and 10 or 15 here. So what our goal is just to try to get hook the user and then send them to a place where they would like to be, and maybe they don't know where they're going exactly. They just have heard of Gratz College and they want to learn a little more, but we've got to hook them somewhere. So that when I look at a homepage, I often think about what are the relevant hooks. Any other thoughts, Lisa?
Totally. So I really liked several things about this particular site. I really liked the contrast you had mentioned. They've done a good job of, while their hero area is a little bit busier, they've done a great job of, they kept the photo area static. So we have rotating text, but we don't have a rotating photo, which helps the cognitive load, right? We think about, people are online more so than ever. We want to make things clear for them to read, consume the information. And so by not giving them too many things to have to focus their attention on, they're able to kind of, absorb that information. I liked and we noticed this across every single one. We hadn't brought it up though, the sticky header. I think that's a really great feature. If we think about usability and making things easy for people to navigate around, sticky headers are fantastic. I particularly liked in the academic section of the drop-down menu, and it worked really well for this particular school. They've been very concise and succinct in their tier 2 subpages, right? And what I like most certainly about academics is that they labeled these, right, by degree, by program, and in this section. I just thought that was a really nice touch to, again, help people get to the information a little bit more quicker, but still being able to do that in a way that you can skim. So by having the contrast just in the color of the text alone really did help that to skim through all of that. You had mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about the header. If you look at sort of these four items plus give and then apply and inquire, which are probably the most important buttons for this particular part of the site, they pop up there, but it's nice and tight to the top. Doesn't take up a lot of room. Didn't mean to distract you with that.
I know, it's okay. I saw it out of there. So the white space you had brought up in the last one that we looked at, and that's definitely an increasing trend. Making sure we're giving enough space. So again, back to this whole idea of cognitive load, right? Right, where we're making sure that people can absorb the information without overwhelming them, and making sure that there's a good ratio of even typography, right? Font sizes and image sizes in relation to one another, right? So had things been too close to this particular section, you might have felt a little overwhelmed and maybe not have read as thoroughly as you can here with great use of white space all around, the main points of the story section.
Yeah, particularly like this sort of panel, there just isn't a lot of stuff. And so it's really just easy to look at, read, digest. It's one of the few instances I can think of recently, at least, where a gradient works really well. Like this is a nice handling of the whatever that is, the teal to the blue. Does a really good job. So really nice color scheme.
And I like in those white spaces, they put that the dotted treatment along the left and the right, just to give it a little bit extra visual depth to it, but without, again, making it noisy for the person to kind of, consume the information, but also it frames the information, right? It kind of gives your eye, it helps your eyes zoom in to the focal point, which is the content.
So we've talked about an independent school in Boston, in France, college in Philadelphia, and now we're on to school district. Do you want to jump in here, Rita?
Absolutely. So I really like the bold navigation here. You know, I think that was a really good move on their part. And you know what this also allowed them to do was showcase this great photography. They have really good high quality photography, some nice lifestyle shots, right? That's becoming more popular, making sure that you're showing, you know, students thriving and growing and kind of giving a glimpse into the, you know, day in the life of what it would be like to be a student in this particular district. So I think that was really good. As we scroll down, you know, for districts, oftentimes one of the most important things is making sure that we can share information with our families, right? What's going on with the district. And so what I liked what they did here was one, the layout, right? The distinction in that layout gives it some visual interest. So it's not just like a row of news, right? We're able to kind of get a little bit more creative. But what I particularly like is that they chose not to do photos with the main news announcements, because not every news story is necessarily set up to need a photo, right? And what's more important is just getting out that particular announcement.
Yep.
And they've done their white space a nice, interesting way, right? Where they have a muted background color, again, kind of framing the content in a way, but still giving it that openness, still giving it that space, so that way you can skim through this information and quickly understand what it's about.
Yep.
I like the bold controls, so you can quickly get and slide through the information so they're not lost. So you know that there is more information readily available.
Here we are, day of the week. Good job.
I know, as the days just blend together, you know, like what is today? I mean, I think I only know today is Wednesday just because of, you know, Website Wednesday. And then lastly, we're finding districts, they're definitely putting more of a marketing approach to their designs.
Yeah.
So I really like what they've done here, especially calling out the different divisions, which these lead to a landing page with some really thoughtful content. But for districts, you know, their enrollments are also being kind of affected, and companies are moving remote now, right? And we've just seen the tip of that. People are now moving about. They're not even just moving to a different town, they're moving to different states. There's freedom and flexibility. And so people are going to be doing research about which town, which district should I be sending my child to, since essentially the sky is the limit. So I think this is a nice little touch for families that aren't maybe familiar with the area or the district or the schools.
Yeah, I'd also say that there's, you know, I would say an expectation to have video on a site these days. And I like the fact that, you know, they start with kind of the hero image, but you get this inline video that just pops out of nowhere, and it's a nice handling of that. And I also like the word roadmap. I think that's a good word to use that probably rings a bell with a lot of families.
And it takes them through that journey, right? Of that roadmap for their schooling. They start early learning, and then they go through each of the different schools. So I think that was a nice combination that they've done there.
So I think if we were to look at all four of these together and just draw some conclusions, you know, among them, you know, we've talked about, I think I've heard the word simplicity quite a bit, you know, just trying to be more intuitive, thinking about, you know, subtle design elements, but just all around this idea of user first, and what the user's going through, and making sure that they have what they need at any given point in time. And, you know, it may be easy if you're on the, you know, kind of on the administrative end, say, well, whatever, it's there, they'll find it. But that's not where our users are. They want this to be as easy as possible. So, you know, all these little details really matter. So it's nice to see these sites pull it all together.
Yeah, little things add to you know, up to a lot. And so I think that's important. You know, impactful design has purposeful visuals, and you know, we want to be really thoughtful in how we demonstrate that through, you know, again, we talk about visual hierarchy, we talk about simplicity, streamlining that navigation. People are on a lot of websites these days, and so let's make sure that our site is the one that they find refreshing and easy to use.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have made it through 4 sites. Thanks for joining, Rita, and everybody who's been able to join or watching later. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Excellent. Well, thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
All right.